All right, now, everybody, quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
Yes, good morning, all. Welcome. We are on the air for a Monday. Wherever you are listening, taking in our show, we welcome you. I am Mark, and we've got the crew today. Actually, we are one player down today. Kathy and Campbell, good morning to you. Yeah, Kim is out today because her son is not feeling well. So we will soldier on without her, but there's a lot in the show today. I will tell you, got a great guest who you've never met before at 11 o'clock to talk about a bit of what's happening in Hollywood and the labor strife there associated with the Writers Guild, and then the Directors Guild actually approved a new deal. That's a good and bad thing for writers. Meantime, there's speaking of labor, it's going to be a big labor week. There's a slowdown and sick out at the Oakland port, as well as the port of Long Beach and up in Seattle as well. So we're going to get into all of that as the week goes on. But today, we'll touch on the Writers Guild and Directors Guild a little bit. And Jim Avila on the shakeup at Meet the Press. I know. We're big Meet the Press people here, so that's going to be strong. I'm looking forward to a Jim coming through. He's got a column now, a regular column. So he'll tell you where that is. And I don't need to tell you, Mondays bring the mystery. Now, today's mystery that Courtney will bring to us actually is missing one of the M's. It's Mark's Murder Mystery Monday. Well, Mark and Monday and mystery are all there, but the murder in this case is not.
There's never been anything like this.
Yeah, but the story is delicious. And at my request, I said, I think people will like it. So let's do it. So that is the plan. And I think it's going to be, good.
Did you really just do that?
Yeah, I did. I did it. I said it, and I just am going forward with it. A lot of stuff happened over the weekend. Hope you had a good weekend. I will tell you now that Courtney and I had a quiet weekend. I did MC an event for autism. It was an autism charity thing that was really fun. If you want to see pictures of that, it's up on my Instagram, Mark Thompson TV. But apart from that, it was watching an upset in sports. The NBA Finals, you had this team, the Denver Nuggets, favored by 8.5. And what happened, Commissioner? Albert, they just they didn't show
a lot of simple mistakes. They looked kind of rusty, you know. The Heat, flat game one, and the Nuggets. I didn't think the Nuggets played too well. I think Jokic played well. Like he played well again last night. But overall, as a team, I think they're shaking off the 10 days off.
Oh,
so,
okay. You know,
Albert, thank you.
You have a kind of economist's perspective on sports, I've noticed. And it's not, please, this is not an insult. It's just an interesting similarity I've noticed. I'll get to the insults later. But the similarity is that economists tell you after the market drops why it dropped, okay? And they tell you after some company goes bankrupt why they went bankrupt. They seldom have a really good feel for things prior. I mean, sometimes they predict things accurately, sometimes they don't. What I've noticed with you, with Giants, Dubs, etc., is after the fact, you're pretty good at dissecting what happened. But prior to the event, you're not always, weighing in with the kind of insanely specific accuracy that you have after the event. You see my point?
I did study journalism, and I did cover my college sports teams, so this is kind of like how I view sports, unfortunately. But
Albert,
for
thank
you gamblers out there, I can't predict anything for you, so
yeah.
I am of no help.
I also have one thing. You've already received it, Albert. You, I believe, did receive the Rod of Equity and Mercy, did you not?
Well, I think just by association, I help hand them out, so I feel like. I'm
Oh,
like the
but you
Stanley
haven't
Cup holder.
actually formally received it?
No, I'm kind of like I said, there's the guy who travels with the Stanley Cup and he just takes it to events. I feel like that's me in the royal scepter. I had the
Wow,
white gloves
I didn't
on,
know
I had the
this.
sneakers.
I did not know this, Albert. And so maybe now you can be the first to receive what I was delivered to me by some kind of special messenger service over the weekend. It arrived at the home office of the Mark Thompson Show, which is on some desert highway somewhere. I've never even been there. But I don't know if you can see this, but look at what arrived. It's the rod of equity and mercy. At least it was labeled the rod of equity and mercy. I know. I'm almost, and I have to say this.
Receive the rod of equity and mercy.
Even as I hold it, there is a special energy that I experience. And so I want you, Albert, to be the first to receive the rod with this new rod in place, the actual physical rod.
Receive the rod of equity and mercy.
I hope you can.
I'm honored. I hope that will help the Giants win a World Series, the Sharks to win the Stanley Cup, the Warriors dynasty to never end, and world happiness, Mark. That's all I want.
Thank you. The order of those things, I think, is a little bit questionable, but I take your general feel for this. So bravo, Albert. Well done. And I think you feel the grandeur of it. I just might rearrange my priorities a little bit.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Well, the president signed the debt ceiling increase. All of that has happened. The nation averts a catastrophe that would have likely reverberated across the world. It is odd that we still do this dance. We've talked about that before, and I also mentioned to you last week that I'm not particularly happy with concessions made, particularly when it comes to the environment and when it comes to those who need help, who need government programs. Other thing I'm not particularly happy with, just as an aside, is the fact that they sap the IRS of enforcement. The part of the deficit and budgetary requirements and needs of this country involves revenue, and revenue is generated through taxes. And those who pay the least in taxes are those who make the most from this economy, which supports them in all sorts of ways. So, not happy on that at all. I do want to welcome, though, someone who has a perspective on this and all things. We already talked about this, so I don't really want to retill this soil about the debt ceiling. But I would like to get into a couple of other things that Jim Avila might have some thoughts on. He writes a column now on media and politics. This is something that I think, as you know, is where all the action is when it comes to the national debate, because media, frankly, determines the narrative. Give you a classic example in the election with Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. The media wouldn't stop talking about Hillary Clinton's emails. They got front and center. Meanwhile, orphaned in all of that was the story of Donald Trump redlining, avoiding taxes, money laundering accusations in New York City. I mean, this guy was fairly well documented as a corrupt, skeezy guy, but the skeeziness sort of took I understand it's hard to fact check him in real time and all this sort of thing, but in addition to that, it just didn't really get much play. What got play was Hillary Clinton's emails. And so when Comey came forward with 10 days to go, et cetera, blah, 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 you saw the media run like a dog toward a garbage truck toward the email story. That's just one example. The media is constantly redefining the narrative. Fox News Channel, they have all their minions paying attention to what they do, and that influences voting. So I'm really excited, and I'm encouraged that Jim Avila is doing this ongoing story of media and politics, an ongoing column, and he's with us now. How about it for Jim Avila, everybody? Hello, sir.
Good morning. Good morning.
So you've done a column most recently. This is in Barrett Media. You can find Jim on Twitter, and I guess you tweet out the columns there every week.
It's called Barrett News Service, and they used to have just a sports column, a sports blog, a newsletter, and about 6 months ago they started publishing a news service of that kind, and it has. I have to be honest with you. One of the reasons why they wanted me to come on and write a column was because it's very right-wing oriented. This place, mostly because it covers radio, AM radio, and as you know, Mark, what wins or what is on, what's left in AM radio these days is right-wing radio. So their interest and their columnists are a lot from right-wing radio. So they wanted some kind of balancing act, and so I'm on there, and clearly a progressive, and to be honest, if you look at the rest of the stuff, it's mostly local radio guys who are writing a column, and many of them don't have the network experience or the high-level White House experience that I have. So I think it does add something to that service, and I hope people watch it.
Yeah. I hope they do too. I hope people will check it out. I saw that the numbers on your column dwarf the numbers on everybody else's column that's ever written anything on that. So I applaud you on that, and I hope that momentum continues. Over the weekend, there was an announcement that Chuck Todd, the longtime host of Meet the Press, is no longer going to be the longtime host of Meet the Press. He's stepping away. The Sunday shows generally, you wrote this, your latest is on this, that's why I touch on it now. The Sunday shows generally, Jim, I'll be honest and tell you that I think they have an inside, I don't know if it's inside the Beltway per se, but a more and more limited appeal to, and maybe it's always been this way. I don't think it's always been this way, but maybe it's been this way for a while. But I wonder if you could just give me the take on how significant the Sunday shows are, who watches them, and then your thoughts on this Meet the Press thing as well, the shakeup there.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that there's about 3 million people for each of the three major shows. So that's a significant audience, but that audience is those 9 million people, maybe a little less than that, are largely political nerds, okay? I watch all three every Sunday. And because I'm a political nerd, I covered the White House. I'm very interested in that stuff. And what I really like are the panels more than anything else. The interviews are frequently not as enlightening. Now, in my opinion, ABC does a pretty decent job when George is doing it and when Martha's doing it. And Jonathan Karl's really grown a lot, in my opinion, my former colleague. And they do a pretty good job of pushing back. I saw Martha the other day, just totally shut down. You're not answering my question. This is my question, and then you can go to your talking point. She's very good at that, and they don't push back as hard. I'm not sure if it's because they're afraid of her or because she's a woman. It's one of those two things, but it's pretty good. The Face the Nation with Margaret Brennan, who is very smart. She came from Bloomberg as an anchor there. CBS groomed her. She was at the White House with me as well, and she's. But Face the Nation does less about politics and more about policy. So if you're interested in policy and you're tired of the back and forth from Republicans and Democrats, she does a lot of that, and that makes her kind of interesting and different. Their panels, in my opinion, are not as good. She does push back, and she's good about that. She dissects what they're saying and gets them off the talking points. Now we go to NBC. And I watch Meet the Press usually first because I like their panels. Their panels are quite strong. They don't yell at each other back and forth, but they have diverse opinion. They have Republicans, but not Republicans who say that the election was bogus and that Joe Biden is not our president. That's a disqualifying thing at NBC and ABC, and I think at CBS too. They don't allow those people on for the most part. So the panels are good. now we come to Chuck Todd. Now, I served at the White House with Chuck Todd, and he was at first a White House correspondent. And a little inside baseball here is that he was a White House correspondent that Brian Williams, who was the network anchor at the time, didn't want to put on because he was not a good storyteller. Okay, he came as a political editor, so he was good at his strong point. Let me put it that. I'm not saying he's good at it. His strong point was analysis. Okay, but
political analysis
at the top, right? Political analysis. But at the top of the world of the nightly news, what they want was somebody who can package the day's developments in 2 minutes.
I see.
And in a strong way. He couldn't do that. They tried. In fact, the reason I know this is because Brian and Neil Shapiro, who was Steve Kappas, I think, was the president of NBC News, came to me and asked me if I would come over to NBC and do that job. I didn't. I had a contract with ABC. But so he went from kind of failing at that job to being promoted after David Gregory didn't do well at Meet the Press.
Him, yeah.
Stretch, George Bush used to call him, because he's like 6'5".
Oh, I see.
And a friend of mine, he worked in the Chicago Bureau of NBC News with me. If you're in this business long enough, you kind of know everybody. So they promoted Chuck Todd. So Chuck Todd.
So you're saying essentially this mediocrity that has typified Chuck Todd's work at the White House and elsewhere, on some level, he evolved to being the host of Meet the Press.
In my opinion, he failed up. Okay, I mean that happens a lot in our business, mostly among executives. I expect Chris Lick to be promoted any day now to, something in at Discovery.
Chris Lick runs.
We'll
CNN.
get into that, right?
Yeah.
But because that's what happens, you fail at one thing and they put you in someplace else if you're an executive and give you a golden parachute. But I'm sorry, that was parenthetic. Back to Chuck Todd. So he becomes host. And for the last 10 years, he has become the biggest target on Twitter and among critics because he doesn't push back effectively on all these talking points. He sits there and nods. At one point, one of the worst guys was this guy, Peter Navarro.
Sure.
Peter Navarro was a White House henchman that was put out to the shows who would take him to defend Trump and to attack the media.
He would say anything.
And he had no basis in reality. So there are two things that Chuck is really most remembered for. Number one, Peter Navarro at that point was saying that the Democrats were out to get Donald Trump. Okay, that's true. But he claimed that the Democrats were trying to undercut Trump and undercut the economy to make it fail, similar to what we're hearing now about the Republicans, and so that Trump would fail. But he had no evidence for it. And it was a talking point. And instead of pushing back, why is that true? Where show me where you have evidence for that. Chuck Todd merely said, I take your point, and moved on because he had to move on to the next question. He's famous for that. I take your point when it's not. That's his way of claiming not to agree, but at the same time agreeing or letting it go. The other thing he was famous for, of course, is the Kellyanne Conway interview, where she said that she used the word alternate facts. And he didn't really push back on that. And that became sort of a mantra for all of the Trump spokespeople who appeared on these shows. So he became really a target. And in many people's opinion, the worst at pushing back. He tried a little bit near the end because I think he started to hear the complaints, but was not good.
So what? Let me just ask you this: step out of it, and then you can tell me the future for the show and overall the future for these shows. But amidst all of this, I mean, you're evaluating him in one way. Those of us who are just grabbing a cup of coffee and blindly turning the television on or watching it on YouTube, however, we're evaluating it, and I use small e on evaluating it. We're just kind of taking it in a different way. I mean, you're far more rigorous, I think, in your evaluation than most of us might be. What were the ratings? Were people watching? I mean, how did it do versus the other shows, ABC and CBS, the ones you described?
Not well. When Tim Russert was doing it, it was sort of the gold standard. Now, I stated in my column that I think how Tim Russert would do today might be different because it is totally different. But he was back in the days when people didn't lie and lie and lie and lie. He did push back. But the good old days, when Republicans could come on and have a discussion instead of talking points that were lies, that's when Tim Russert was. And he was number one and strong and was for a couple decades, I believe, my colleague and also totally respected in and out of the business. Then David Gregory came along. He had some trouble. He wasn't really a problem. It was, also before the Trump years. And then Chuck Todd. Between Gregory and Chuck Todd, they went from number one to now they're number three. And it's a tie between Face the Nation and ABC this week because Face the Nation has CBS Sunday Morning as a lead-in, and there's a lot of people who watch CBS Sunday Morning. That's probably the most popular show on the weekend. In the morning. So, they get a real push to Face the Nation. But ABC has done pretty well and is number one a lot, especially when George is there. It's a very good show, in my opinion.
Yeah, you mentioned in your column that you really like it. You like the panelists there. You like that panel discussion. I, of course, as you know, always loathe the fact that they put Chris Christie on because I knew that he's a candidate for political office. And I understand some people move into this, but, Donna Brazile, who I've had absolutely no taste for, although she does give you the mainstream institutional Democratic position. But Chris
it used
Christie
to be great when I thought when Rahm Emanuel was there to balance out Chris Christie. They were quite good together.
Yeah, they're both really good, and that's
it.
one of the reasons I don't like Chris Christie is because he's so good at it.
Yeah,
and he's a right winger. But anyway, go ahead. So
but he's not going to be there anymore, by the way.
Yeah, well, finally, right? Okay.
Yeah, he wasn't there this weekend, and because he's running for president, he will not be there.
Yeah,
officially running for president, right?
So the future of these shows is what, Jim? I mean, the reality is, those of us who watch them, those of us who pay attention, we're political junkies. I don't even know if it's nerds, and we just enjoy politics on some level. Someone like yourself, I mean, who really has a kind of granular knowledge. But then the rest of America, I'm going to say it's generally older people who feel wedded to things like facts and various positions, what's happening in Washington, and certainly within Washington. And this is not an incidental point at all. Within Washington, they watch those shows or watch clips from those shows. Isn't that right?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where the powerful watch, right? The people who are in charge. So, and, a lot of people who are junkies, as you say, political junkies, and people who, people from the right who are media haters, they pretend not to watch, but they do watch because they want to keep tabs on what they're saying.
Right.
So, will it fade away? I don't think so. I mean, 3 million people is still a pretty good viewership. That 3 million people is what usually Tucker Carlson had on Monday through Friday nights. Okay. So when you compare it to cable, it's still a high volume. Broadcasting still gets a lot of people. People have been saying that the evening newscasts are dead for as long as I can remember, because yes, the audience has gone down, but David Muir during the pandemic was the most watched program on television or cable, not the most watched newscast, but the most watched any kind of program, entertainment or anything else. So when, and even today, he still gets 6 to 8 million viewers a night. And Lester Holt gets 6 million viewers. Those are big numbers.
Yeah.
So, is it going to go away? I don't think so. I mean, not for a while. I mean, when TV goes away, when we're all in streaming, maybe then it goes to something else. But right now, as long as broadcasting's still there.
The young generation is not watching this stuff, but the young generation isn't watching much of anything on television as evidenced by the numbers. And I also think that these Sunday shows, I'd offer this, You can include this in one of your columns in the future. Take it for free.
All right, thank you.
The young people still see in one form or another these lifted moments from those shows. So quotes, political positions, etc. They are served up as YouTube Shorts. They're served up on Twitch. They're served up on TikTok, whatever, and they are ingested by younger people that way. That's both a good thing and a bad thing, but it's a thing. So,
right.
Yeah.
And Twitter. They have a big home on Twitter. You can watch much of it on Twitter. My dad used to say, and I think he stole this from somebody, but nobody reads the newspaper until they have a mortgage. So, young people have other things they're doing.
Sure.
They're not focused as much, although they're starting to become, because I think Trump was such a disaster that they're on their issues that he has brought them back into watching the news now. So,
Albert, are you paying attention to what's going on, or are you still waiting for your mortgage to kick in?
Albert, thank you.
Yeah. Albert's kind of our younger person on the show.
Ask Albert whether or not he watches the evening news, or I'm sure does he watch the Sunday morning programs?
What is your pattern, Albert?
Does he listen to us, Mark?
He's barely listening to this show, is my guess.
Well, ever since I started working at Station X or KGO, obviously I had to keep myself in the loop. So I did watch my fair share of evening news, all the lead up into Jeopardy, basically the news before Jeopardy, Spencer Christian, and then CBS Sunday Morning is great. I do watch that. So,
wow,
Albert, thank you.
Wow, how about that?
So I'm a little
older
different than my generation.
Yeah, he's starting to really grow up, our Albert. It's very exciting. But I take your point. Yeah, the more you have in the game, the more connected you are. And those of us who've worked a lifetime, we have retirement we're trying to scrape together or whatever, and we care about those things like. We care about, I think everybody cares, but I'm just saying maybe we see some of these details as more important than others might.
Yeah, when your 401k starts taking a dip because Elon Musk said something or Donald Trump said something, then you pay more attention,
Yeah. All right, Jim, we love you. We'll see you on Friday. And check out, it's Jim's column. Well, you can find him on Twitter.
Go to my Twitter, Jim Avila
at
ABC.
Jim Avila ABC, and you'll find more. Jim Avila, everybody. Yes, I love it. I know. I'm excited too. Thanks, Jim.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Bye-bye. There was a big settlement before I get to Courtney. Did you have something, Albert? Sorry. I was just going to mention that DuPont and spin-off companies from DuPont are going to pay $1.2 billion to settle these forever chemical lawsuits. These forever chemicals are the PFAS. We've talked about them a lot with Belinda Weymouth. 3 corporations that produce a class of toxic substances commonly called forever chemicals, they're called that because they are in the environment and in your body forever, have agreed to pay $1.2 billion to settle liability claims brought by municipal water agencies who say the companies knowingly contaminated drinking water supplies around the United States. Let me just step out of the story for a moment to remind you, this is what I always say. If you're counting on business to be a good corporate citizen, your faith is misplaced. Again, they knowingly contaminated drinking water supplies around the United States. DuPont and 2 spin-off companies, Chemours and Corteva, will pay into a fund regarding their malfeasance, ding word, I know, yes, to help remove those chemicals known as PFAS, which can take centuries to break down in the environment. They're used in everything from food packaging to cosmetics to fabrics, firefighting foam. PFAS have been found in the blood of nearly all U.S. residents and in a majority of people around the world. They're linked to a host of health problems: liver damage, lower fertility, asthma, thyroid problems, low infant birth weight, and cancer. I mention this because it's a landmark decision or agreement. It's a liability claim, and so it's settled at $1.2 billion. But I also mention it because you're going to see increasingly from this Supreme Court, which I loathe from the depths of my soul, this insanely business-friendly court. You've just seen them completely undermine the EPA's ability to regulate toxins of this sort in our water supply. And our clean water supply has been, again, undercut by this wetlands judgment that they made at the court, the Supreme Court I'm talking about. That's huge in terms of clean water. In any case, you're going to see fewer and fewer of these liability cases at this level. And as I mentioned, the EPA's ability to regulate this stuff is going to be completely undercut eventually. I mean, it's not even that eventually. And the reason for that is the Supreme Court is going to help lead the charge to limit liability in many of these cases. So this story I just told you, there are going to be fewer of them because of just that. Your ability to actually take a company to court like DuPont is going to be radically undercut in this new America that's run by this insanely business-friendly Supreme Court. Smash the like button like a boss.
Smash it with your iron rod.
We've got a lot to come. Courtney's Mark's Murder Mystery Monday still ahead. Also, top of the hour, Nicholas Gonzales. Now, Nicholas is an actor-producer. We'll go to Hollywood, ask him about what's happening with the directors having just made a huge deal moving forward. They didn't strike. They made a deal with producers. And the writers are still on strike. And might this help the writers? Or might it hurt the writers? Would there have been strength and solidarity had the directors not made a deal and said, hey, we're with the writers and some of the same concerns the writers have, we have. I'll get into more detail on that. It's actually really interesting. And labor is having a moment across America, not only in Hollywood, but I mentioned the ports at Long Beach, in Oakland, in Seattle, at Starbucks. You're seeing more and more unionization of American workers. So we're having a moment in America for that. All right, smash the like button like a boss.
Your iron rod.
Yeah, smash it with your iron rod. And next, she's a fan favorite. Courtney joins us next. Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Why are you yelling?
That's not fake. That's real.
It's fantastic.
Who's Mark Thompson?
You can't hear it.
Hey, which one of you is Mark Thompson?
What? What's the problem? Jeez.
I was asking.
I can't get a break around here. I cannot get a break. I'm really. Where's my? I mean.
You know, they do this to me all the time. I don't know what the hell they do it for.
What the hell is going on around here? What's the problem, Courtney?
I was asking if Kim was here.
She's not.
Okay, I was just checking.
My God.
This story is about a woman who was sort of notorious for what she did, and so I was looking for other female support.
We have
yeah,
women
that was
in the
all.
audience. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
But now, I think we've gotten off on an awkward foot. Now,
that's not my fault.
Albert, is Courtney's level about right? Are you happy with it? Feels a little hot to me.
A little hot.
It sounds pretty good with yours.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's all we care about. We're trying to be more cognizant of the levels here on the show.
Got it.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means, but I'm
well,
trying
cognizance
to.
a ding word, of course.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we're trying to. All right. On Mondays, I've been thrown off my game.
Oh my gosh.
Why are you yelling?
All right.
Jeez. That didn't take very much.
No, it
by
didn't.
the way.
It didn't. We had a very nice weekend, Courtney and myself.
We did.
Found a show that might be of interest to, and actually it was
Michael's recommendation.
on this show. Michael recommended on this show. It's on Apple TV.
His first really great recommendation.
Michael is 100% on his recommendations. And Michael recommended this show called
Bad Sisters.
Bad Sisters.
Yep. Mm-hmm. It's great. I mean, it's well written and it's very funny and kind of in the spirit of the story that I am going to talk about today. It's a lot of female protagonists and it's sort of this coming together of sisters to perpetuate a crime. It's very clever. It's actually really well shot too. I think that has an artistic
there's
sense
a vibe,
to it.
right? I agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
There's a vibe.
So,
that's definitely true.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Courtney, without any further delay, what?
But we talked about because there's no murder in the story today. Remember?
Oh, I mentioned, but let me reiterate. There is one M missing.
What?
You have Mark, you have Monday, you have mystery, but you do not have murder because this story has a lot going on with it, but no one is killed. Now, that said, I thought it was so juicy that I said, well, because Courtney was telling me about it. I said,
There's never been anything like this.
Yeah, I said, why don't you do the story? I didn't know this story, and I'm betting a lot of other people didn't know it.
Yeah.
And so it is true crime, which is why I felt it was sort of broadly in the same category. And so we'll do it now. Excited. This is Mark's Murder Mystery Monday.
Welcome to Mark's
Red Rum.
Murder
Red Rum.
Mystery
Red Rum.
Monday.
Once again, everybody, for Courtney.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. So the story that we're talking about today takes place in the late 19th century. So I did not have as many visuals available, unfortunately.
Okay.
So some of them are artistic renderings and others are photos of similar situations, but not of the exact situation that we're going to cover today. But we're talking about Sarah Emily Howe. And Sarah Emily Howe was a woman who, in the late 19th century, was very progressive and opened a bank that was available to and serviced only the interests of women. The women had to be single or widowed. They could not have a relationship with a man.
Oh, wow.
And
because it was thought single women needed a place where they weren't, I mean, everything in the patriarchy was really conspiring against them.
Yep.
So this was a good thing, a righteous thing, it seemed.
Yeah. And so glad things have changed 200 plus years later, by the way. So
I think
glad.
you're being sarcastic right now.
Yep. But women were the property of their husbands. So once you were married, you weren't allowed to own land. You weren't allowed to have money. Sometimes it feels like that. But and so she opened a bank to service the needs and interests of women. But as I mentioned, you had to be single or you had to be widowed, but you could not be shacking up or married.
Okay.
And she offered a quite healthy return on your investments. So she promised women that were depositing their money into her bank an 8% return every month. And she gave you 3 months up front when you put your money in the bank. So let's say you put in $100, which is like $1 zillion now. You would get $24 back up front when you put in the $100, when you deposited that.
So that seems like an incredible deal.
Yeah, I mean, like, who's not gonna take that deal? And so if you let your deposit mature, so it was in the bank for a year, you would get $96 back on your 100. So women were flocking to do this.
Let me just stop you and just say the finances were there, meaning that what you just described. The money was there. There was an economic inducement, if you will, to be part of this. And also, societally, I think if you're a woman at that time, you feel like, God, I'm really getting screwed everywhere.
Yeah.
My only legitimacy is through this. If I hook up with a guy. And finally, there's a place where I can put my money. And she also is single, the person who's running it. So you're
Exactly.
you're welcomed here. Yeah.
I mean, look at what we had to wear to go to the bank. All right. Tough times. There were no sweatpants and hat and
you
running
don't
out
miss
to
the
the bank.
fashions back then, Courtney?
No, I mean, look at this. This is insanity.
You didn't want a hoop skirt, maybe?
I mean, I'm down for a good hoop skirt, but not for an occasional errand run, right? There's a place and time for that. So she offers 8%, and women were like, they were mortgaging their furniture, which I guess was a thing back then, and mortgaging their homes. And women from around the country were sending in money because they were hearing from other women about this incredible opportunity. And it's exactly what you think it was, which is that this was a massive Ponzi scheme that was being had before Charles Ponzi was even born, in the same city in which he would build one of his major Ponzi schemes.
There's Ponzi.
Yeah.
Charles Ponzi. If you've always wondered what he looks like, there he is on YouTube.
So it's literally named after him.
Shout
but
out.
Sarah Howe was actually perpetrating this crime before he was even born.
Wow.
And so she bought a storefront and created a bank. Now this is not her bank, but this, if you're watching or looking at the screen, this is a similar bank that would have happened. This is in 1900, so she was doing this 20 years earlier. But in 1880, her husband is honorably discharged from the Union Army at the end of the Civil War, and she moves to Boston with him. This is around 1850s-ish, and she becomes a fortune teller and a clairvoyant, actually.
Literally, the woman who opened a bank
Yeah.
is first a clairvoyant and fortune teller.
Yes, and she was a doctor.
There's never
but
been
not
anything
medically
like
trained.
That's
And
not fake. That's real.
She was enterprising because she saw an opportunity to basically steal a lot of people's money, and so she opens this bank in 1879 in Boston. By the time she was caught, 1,200 women roughly had given her about $500,000, which I think, based on inflation, is like 15 million roughly today.
Wow.
But yeah, she was buying mansions with cash. So she bought one mansion that was $40,000. She paid $20,000 up front in $100 bills. She would have these lavish parties.
The Woman's Bank of Boston, as it was called.
Yes. So the first initial bank was Ladies Deposit Company.
I see.
But
Okay.
I think that they also sort of called it in the press Ladies Boston Bank.
I see.
But she appointed it really well. She decorated it in the very spirit and nature of women, and she serviced and let only women into the bank. In fact,
I didn't get that. Could you try again?
Yeah, I'm sure.
The only reason that she got caught is because a reporter tried to go in. They wouldn't let him in because he was a man. So he dresses up as a woman, and he goes back and he goes into the bank and he starts asking questions.
Oh,
yeah,
It's a wild
exactly.
idea. Just
Yeah.
wait, what?
Yeah.
I know. And so he finds out some information, and then he writes a story in January of 1880, basically saying like, this woman's full of it.
Wow.
And actually, what happens is she gains more notoriety and popularity through that article, and more women come to her and give her more money. It wasn't until September of 1880, when a series of articles came out calling her a fraudster, that eventually in October there was a run on the bank. And as you imagine, since she had, I think, $196,000 that she would have owed depositors, she was arrested because she didn't have the money.
But it's interesting because they don't have, at that time, they don't have the kind of regulatory system that we have now. Even so, a lot today is people get away with.
Clearly.
But back then, you know, in the late 1800s, there was nothing.
No, and there was, well, I mean, she was a clairvoyant, a doctor, and a banker. So clearly there was no oversight happening in one of the in a fairly large city, right, in Boston. But there was also a lack of, there wasn't media, right? So the newspapers were writing about this. But what is interesting is she gets she's found guilty of basically collecting money by malicious means, and she goes to jail for 3 years. And when she gets out, she opens another bank in the same city.
Wow.
And part of the issue was there were so many immigrants coming to the U.S. that there was a lot more there were more people that she could take advantage of that hadn't heard about what she had been doing 3 years earlier. So she opens the second bank. She's found out after a year. She then goes and opens a third bank in Chicago.
Well, this is a key thing because back then you didn't have what we have. There's no
Mark Thompson show.
There's no Mark Thompson show. Without the Mark Thompson show to connect people and get them the word about some kind of fraud like this, they move in and they want it. And they succumb to the same deal that the same fraud that she had pulled off and that actually got her jailed.
I think too that when I was listening to some of the reporting on this, it was interesting because they were saying how women were thought to be morally superior, which I thought was interesting. And so she used that to perpetuate these crimes on other women, kind of like, I know how challenged you are in certain areas. I'm here to help you. I'm also a woman. You can trust me.
Sure.
And so it was fairly easy for her to continue to build these Ponzi schemes, not only in the same city she was at, but in Chicago. But eventually she's found out. She actually ends her life, meaning she dies in Boston, where this all originated, as a clairvoyant and a fortune teller, but with government aid. So she's effectively living in a boarding home. She's penniless, and she ends up passing there. Yeah.
Wow.
But it's a really crazy story, especially in the context that it was such a massive fraud and it was happening even before Charles Ponzi was born. He was born in 1882 in Italy. That Sarah Howe was in fact building this incredible fraud, and so I thought it was such a compelling story. Yeah.
Look, YouTube users said this is my favorite MMM story yet.
Oh wow, I love that. That's
so
great.
I think you can from time to time on here come on with like true crime stories that don't necessarily end up with some grisly murder.
And then she's murdered. We're rewriting history.
But it is amazing that, and this is worth, there's so many things that are kind of, if you will, takeaways. There's so many takeaways from the story, but I really think it's true that when you feel that someone is part of your community and you feel as though you're something of an underdog in the community, specifically here, a woman, single woman, you feel as though there's so few lifeboats for you in the world. And here is this other single woman. She's opened up this bank. She's given you this good return. Like, we're a community that's going to take care of each other. And you go to it that way. And now let's cut to contemporary America, where you had the same thing in a Ponzi scheme developed by who? Bernie Madoff. Bernie Madoff was widely regarded, and there's more going on there, but a major authority, ran the NASDAQ, all this other stuff, and respected on Wall Street. But among those who were most hurt by Bernie Madoff were the people in his community, the Jewish community. Many universities, I think, that were connected to the Jewish community, they had their entire endowment in Bernie Madoff. So there are actually eerie similarities to a community that feels as though, well, they'll take care of us because they understand that,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that absolutely. And obviously, like, that's the case here. And it's interesting because, as I mentioned earlier, she only worked with single women or widowed women because she didn't want men evaluating or taking into consideration what she was building.
Sure.
There was the sense that they would be able to determine that it was a fraud. But you're right. I mean, she perpetuated this crime because she was able to go and have women trust her at a time when women had no options. I mean, you had no options. And actually, most of the women who gave her money were on sort of the lower socioeconomic range.
Sure.
But I'll tell you this. Be the first in a Ponzi scheme, not the last.
The first people were paid out.
The first people got paid out.
Same thing with Madoff.
Yeah.
In fact, that was one of the things that claw back the government clawed back a lot of that Madoff money. If you haven't seen the Madoff documentaries, it's really powerful stuff. Roberta said, Ms. Howe gives psychics and clairvoyants a bad name.
I agree with you. I agree with you.
Was her husband in on it too, Cobra? No, she wasn't married. That's the point.
She was married.
I'm so sorry. I missed that.
Part of why she was married. She was actually married twice, and one marriage was annulled and one was divorced. And the reason that's important is because she got married a third time, and that was very rare in the late 19th century. And so they actually use that in some of the media against her character, because she had so many failed marriages. But she was married. She was married to a man who was in the Union Army. And after he was honorably discharged, they moved to Boston. Part of why they think she was married is because technically, I guess, based on the laws that were in the U.S. at that time, she couldn't perpetuate a crime because she was married. And so her husband would have been the fall guy. But yes, she was married to Florimond Howe.
I didn't realize that. But I thought that she was single, yeah.
I think what happened was they made some sort of deal with him where he just kind of left. Like, he wasn't part of the trial. He didn't really contribute much. I don't know how the government sort of handled that relationship, but effectively he left and she endured the trial herself.
Wow.
Not endured. She needed to she needed to go to jail. She went through it. So
Courtney, what can I say?
Oh, thank you for
having
having
me. A very nice ride through a huge ripoff back in the 1800s that preceded Charles Ponzi.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting. In the same
city.
Sad that
it wasn't named for her. Of course, they name it for the guy.
I mean, I know. Yeah. It's just the
What was her last name again?
Howe.
Howe. Yeah.
Howe. Sarah Emily Howe.
I can see Ponzi has a better sort of ring to it.
It's true. She never, people tried to find her toward the end of her life and confront her. She never admitted to it ever. She blamed it on a lot of other people.
Sure.
But yeah.
As one does.
Yeah.
Julie says, super interesting topic, Courtney. Courtney, you should consider this, broadening from murder to other true crime.
Well, Mark's in charge, so
I'm giving you the green light, please.
He's not as big a fan of the true crimes that involve
murder. I don't like grisly stuff. It's true.
This might be something that we look.
Yeah. But I'm glad you do recognize that I'm in charge. It's about time someone come in here.
Let me finish that.
Do you know
for the show only?
I'm kind of a big deal.
All right. Thank you, Courtney.
Murder Mystery Monday on the Mark Thompson Show.
How about it for Courtney, everybody? Yeah. Cool to have her in. I know. I'm just doing something over here, Albert. Now I've got it. Thank you. Really, really cool. Yeah, I liked that, even though there was no murder. You see why I liked it, Albert? It's a good ride, and it's fascinating.
I'm on the same boat with you, Mark. Like, when I'm watching media, there's a lot of true crime fans out there. Like, when I'm just in my free time, I don't want to get stressed out. So that's why I avoid these things.
It's so brutal. Life is tough enough, but Courtney and so many other people love it. And look at Dateline. Dateline drops a podcast. And, Josh is a friend of the show, Mankiewicz. He'll come back soon, I'm sure. But they drop a podcast that is just the audio version of their television show. They change nothing. Okay, there's no supplemental stuff, supplemental music, supplemental explainers. It's just an audio version of Dateline NBC, and it goes to #1 in podcasts. So clearly there's an appetite for it there. But it's just astounding to me because it ain't my jam. But it's cool that Courtney's way into it. It's cool that she shares some of it here. In the next hour, I will mention from Hollywood, actor-producer Nicholas Gonzales. We'll talk to him. He's a Stanford guy. I'll talk to him about Stanford a little bit. I mean, I don't know. Probably not. But my point is he is a Stanford kid. And I'm really wanting to hear about what's happening in Hollywood, how things are changing. And as I mentioned to you, Directors Guild made a deal. Writers Guild still needs to make a deal. But while we're doing that, I have a story about you and life expectancy in the U.S.
The Mark Thompson Show.
The country's life expectancy problem gained renewed attention in recent years during the COVID-19 pandemic. We had the largest drop in life expectancy in the U.S. since World War II. As U.S. life expectancy continues to plummet, a new report finds the country has been at life expectancy disadvantage since the 1950s, and it's only gotten worse since. They just published this study in the American Journal of Public Health. Of course, the editor of that is the
Emil Schaffhausen.
Yeah, the third. Yes. And Dr. Emil Schaffhausen III and the American Journal of Public Health indicates that more than 50 countries have surpassed the U.S. in life expectancy since the 1930s. And this is the part that may not surprise you. A handful of states may be at least partly responsible. The scale of the problem is, a quote, is bigger than we ever thought, older than we ever thought. And the number of countries outperforming the United States is much larger than we ever thought. That's according to the author of the study.
Emil Schaffhausen.
The third, yeah. Dr. Stephen Wolf is the other name he goes by. The findings offer a new perspective on U.S. life expectancy and shed light on how to reverse the trend, according to experts. So, without getting too deep into the history, it's pretty sad. We had our best decade, probably, in the 1970s and into the early 80s in terms of improving life expectancy in this country. Provisional data from 2021 shows U.S. life expectancy has dropped to 76.1 years. That's the lowest it's been since 1996. The general takeaway is the same. The timeline shows how life expectancies may be heavily influenced by systemic factors that are larger than individual health choices. Things change. That means there's a possibility for more improvement in the future, they say. But when you look around the rest of the world is on an uptick. We are on a downtick. By expanding the number of countries, you can see that 56 surpassed the U.S. in life expectancy since 1950. Middle-income countries made enough gains in life expectancy to catch up and then get past the U.S. And smaller economies with lower populations and different government systems all did well as well. Countries that don't necessarily have all the support systems and infrastructure and policies that exist in higher income countries are still outperforming the U.S. The small cluster of states, this is what I'll leave you with, are affecting our numbers countrywide. Northeastern and western states experienced the fastest growth in life expectancy. South Central and Midwestern states saw the slowest growth. That cluster of states really played an outsized role in producing these poor rankings for the United States. States doing very well, like Hawaii, New York, and other high performers, are ranked among some of the same life expectancies that we see in the healthiest countries in the world. You can see that diet, general health affect longevity. It's happening at multiple levels. In general, California does well. It's a healthier lifestyle. And in general, the rhythm of life here in California is better. But overall, the U.S. is being dragged down by a handful of states and by problems with diet and a support structure that just isn't there. The largest drop in life expectancy since World War II.
What the hell is going on in the United States of America?
Ron gets it. Well, thanks for that study.
Dr. Emil Schaffhausen.
The third. Yeah, that's the latest on that.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Smash the like button like a boss. I guess we need the thumbs up. I was going to tell you something about YouTube. I forget what I was going to mention to you. Certain YouTube things I was going to mention to you, but I'm going to pass them for now till tomorrow. But you heard from Jim Avila in the first hour, and I have now a simple, kind of a quizzy sort of thing. The most common, this just passed my desk over the weekend, and I thought it was kind of interesting. The most and least common dates of the year to be born. Like what month is the most popular month to be born in? All right. Think back, with you'll need 9-ish months, right? What is the most popular month for birthdays? October, says Ricky O'Bear one. July, says Kathleen Bryan. You got these, Albert? Lulu May says May. Joe says September. August, says David. Katie says March. March feels like, I might guess March also. Just when you think about when people might be most active in the reproductive area. August, September, 8 to 9 months after Christmas and New Year's. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Christmas and New Year's. If you look at that as the party time. Bill says September. We all know what our parents are doing on New Year's Eve. The actual retail price is September. That's right. Yeah. You guessed September. You get points. September 12th, 18th, 25th, and 26th, which are all around 9 months after the holiday season, were found to be the most common days for births.
No, my best friend's birthday is on the 12th, September 12th. Yep.
I love that. I really do love that. In fact, Christmas and birthdays around Christmas, I am born the day after, one of the least likely days to be born. I like to think of it as an elite group of people who are born around Christmas. Thank you. Also, New Year's Day, very uncommon relative to the rest of the population. July 4th and late November, also not common. Popular birthdays in September, widely believed to be because of the cold weather experienced during the previous winter, encouraging more people to stay indoors. September 9th is the most common in this data set. September 19th is the second. So if you follow a customary gestation period from September 9th and 19th, you go back, 9 months, you would have been conceived December 17th and December 27th. I mean, obviously, your mileage may vary, but that's sort of the general state of things.
Yeah, I just missed the cutoff. I'm in the beginning of August, so not quite the.
Yeah, you don't quite get the September.
September, yeah.
Oh, let me see something here. I don't know if I've. There he is. Anyway, congratulations. John says my girlfriend is December 26th also. Well, you've chosen wisely, John. That's all I have to say to you. Anyway, so it is September, everyone. That's the latest. Again, not necessarily news you can use, but news that you could use for an hour or two, maybe, I would say.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Excited to have this guy on. He is a distinguished actor and a producer. He's done a lot of stuff. He's a real actor. You know, a lot of people, I feel like, just go to Hollywood and they become stars, or they don't, but they don't really put the work in. This guy comes out of Stanford, saw him on legit theater. Like, I've seen him do real stage work. I've seen him do enormously difficult things in terms of broad characters, like way beyond what you'd necessarily think of him being cast as. But then he also does the handsome doctor in The Good Doctor, and he's on La Brea. He does it all, and I'm excited and honored to have him in our mix. Here's Nicholas Gonzales, everybody.
Hey, Mr. Thompson. How you doing, brother?
Nice to see you, sir. Really?
You.
Yeah, look at that.
I wasn't aware you'd seen so many things, and then I was kind of worried that you were mixing me up with someone else. I didn't know who you were introducing initially.
Yeah, I saw you do a theater production at which I met your family. I think I met your dad for sure. I think other members of your family in Los
probably
Angeles.
With Sharon Lawrence.
That's exactly right.
Down at Edgemar Center for the Arts.
Yeah, you were really good, man. I have a lot of respect for those who can do legit theater and also what you do, television and film.
And me too. It's been a long time since I've done theaters. I have a lot of respect for those guys too. I miss it.
I also saw you, as I could just take a walk through the Nicholas Gonzales memory lane real quick, and then I want to ask you what's going on in Hollywood. But I saw you play like a very gay forward character, and I'm trying to remember what it was like. I feel like it was a primetime show on ABC, and I forget what the show was. Do you know what I'm talking? You know what I'm talking about?
There's been a few, maybe Brothers and Sisters, I think.
I feel as though you were a cross-dresser, or you were, it was more than that, though. I think you were no? Anyway.
No, early on, like probably one of the first things I ever did was there were 6 pretty critically acclaimed episodes of a really show that could, I think, quickly be seen as corny. But if you look back at MTV's Undressed when it came out in the late 90s, they were kind of pushing some envelopes. I mean, it was what's his name who produced Killing Fields.
Oh wow!
Roland Joffe was the producer for this, so I was like, oh my god, Killing Fields is such an incredible film. I can't wait to be a part of this project, sir. And it ended up being a lot more of a soap opera, but it was ahead of its time. And I did play a character who was very openly gay in a gay relationship and whatnot. But I don't know if
I don't recall the name of the show.
I'm trying to think of what I
remember. You were on 6 Feet. Weren't you 6 Feet Under, or was it?
No, I was 6 Feet Under's Freddie Rodriguez, but I know you're not.
No, it's not, I wasn't confusing you with another Latino.
No.
That's great. Well, now, of course, The Good Doctor and then La Brea. I mean, those are two big shows. And hey, when you sign then I want to ask you about what's happening in the world of labor relations in Hollywood. It's a big changes with the Directors Guild taking that deal. When
and all these years later, like, what's it like after 6 Feet Under? Let's talk about, let's break down each season.
A lot of people would have researched exactly what their guest had done. Like, they would never make a mistake like that. Not me. I am just going right head first.
To be fair, you could probably throw a dart at a list of shows and probably land on something that I was on, because there was a period where I was like, I don't care, I'm taking this job. And I just went on a tear of guest and recurring spots. So it's a good possibility I was probably on one of yours.
When you do that, though, that's generally good for you to be on a bunch of stuff, even if the show isn't necessarily you want to be in the game, right?
For me, it's a lot about the part too. And as a guy, like, if you're either a regular on a show, or it's funny, as a regular on a show, you're looking at all the guest stars and the recurring, going, oh man, they're the ones, they got it all figured out. Because they're going from, these guest spots to, then they're going to go to a cool movie, then they're going to go do a bit of theater, but they're looking at the guy who's got the regular position on the TV shoot going, oh man, this guy's got it all figured out. And so it's tough. We want both of them. But yeah, it's great. I mean, I think having different audiences, and now it's not the same. I mean, you can go from a soap opera to Marvel movie. You know, I don't think actors are penalized for things they do. So, you know, I've kind of ran with that. I mean, it's not unusual for you to see me in a Christmas movie. I try to make it a good one, you know, or different, or that's the kind of mission I'm on with some of these things where I'm like, well, what if the script was just good? How about that? You know, what if we started there? So that's my interest, you know.
When you when you manage a career, I guess it has to evolve in a lot of different ways, and you don't always have the the choices that you want. I mean, you've been lucky, as you say, more than lucky. I mean, I think you got to show up with the goods. So now with having achieved some momentum, I'm wondering if you can give us a perspective, both from a performer's standpoint, I mean, from an actor's standpoint, and also, from a producer's standpoint, that is to say, as you begin to, husband these projects through the world of Hollywood, what's happening with writers, with directors, with producers, and with studios? I mean, there is an entrance into this game of AI.
Film husbandry, I love to. This term you've coined now.
As you husband these projects through, Nicholas.
It's funny you say that, though, because I'm doing them alongside my wife. It took really her drive to say, I'm telling you have these ideas, or we have these ideas, or there are things that come around. There's an article you read in the paper that spurs an idea, and there's money to be made. There's a lot that's been left on the table my whole career because I just didn't have it all figured out. And I'm the kind of perfectionist who's far from perfect, like us all, and is so intent on my first draft being the final draft and all that kind of stuff that I found myself really stuck. And it took, my wife going, "Hey, let's get moving. What do you say? Let's
you have create. Mouths to feed, right?"
And I'm like, but you don't know, you're not sure. And she just runs headlong, and 9 times out of 10 has pushed us in all the right directions. So that's been great. But it's a very different, crazy atmosphere out there now. And I'm going to double back to the labor thing in a second. But with all of the different outlets, and as your wife has apparently suggested, with all of these different platforms available for you to, create something, and with all the different stories to tell, is that net win for those of us who are taking it in, or is there more crap out there, or do you think the overall quality hasn't changed? I do think there's a higher availability of everything. I mean, throughout. I always think, projects have to get better. That's the whole thing, right? About become a professional, you have to do a lot of crappy work. You got to put a lot of crap out there, and eventually it gets better. I look back at a lot of my old work. Last week, and I was putting crap out there now. But you look at some of your old work and you realize, and even at other times, there's times when we missed the mark, or, we didn't have the team together, or, whatever reason. This is at its best art, and so at its best. But I think the industry is there is a lot more available. There's a lot more schlock, but also I think there's a lot more that speaks to personal stories out there, which, as we see, are pretty universal. Even those ones that seem so niche that no one would ever greenlight, it's what everyone gravitates to because there are dirty little secrets, or there are little, our little peccadillos, or those kind of stories that we're fascinated by, the people who get caught doing the things we all dream about doing sometimes.
That's a great. I think that's a great. Peccadillo is a ding word. You're right. That's congratulations.
Just a little sin.
The deal with documentaries, I think you really notice it, but also with some of these other things you're talking about, is you can find projects now. I use projects, whatever, movies, TV, whatever it might. Some offering you can find in a way you probably couldn't before. Before there were fewer places. Yeah.
Exactly. No one would have greenlit those projects, or there wouldn't have been a way to get them out to everybody. And now with the advent of everything from YouTube to everything streaming on everything from Snapchat to I don't know,
TikTok,
we're gonna age ourselves. The Facebook and Pick Face. But all that, you never thought, no one's going to look at this vertically, and kids are watching movies on their phone, not even horizontally, but vertically, and everything's kind of a little more focused. So they're shot in these kind of really dramatic close-ups.
For purists, it has to be tough. I remember talking to a major producer who said, this is probably around the year 2000. And he said, "Mark, people will never watch movies on their phone." And every time, and of course, that's maybe
I watched Maverick on the back of like a Qantas flight, like a domestic little
Right.
screen, and it was amazing. It was incredible. I appreciated all of it. But yeah, tiny.
That's great. Advent, you're right, is a ding word. Well done. All right, so what's happening in Hollywood? The directors take this deal. Here's the way I have decoded this a little bit. With solidarity, the directors pushing back on any kind of deal could have shown solidarity with the writers, and maybe that would have helped the writers overall. But the directors made a deal, and this is how that deal could help the writers. They made a deal on many of the things that are associated with back end and compensation that can now be integrated into the writers' deal. Definitely. The only thing the writers still need to work out that the directors didn't need to work out in as big a way is AI. Yeah. So I wonder your thoughts.
You know, it's a hard one. I had a conversation at the Whole Foods this morning with another friend who's a cinematographer who was there with his second kid getting.
That's where deals are made, though, right there at the Whole Foods.
After we literally just dropped off our daughters at school, we're like, hey, and talked about the strike. And you know, I think what's good about the strike, the DGA, I think everyone didn't expect it to last that long, and I can't remember if that's because historically they're a little bit quicker at making these deals or what. But I didn't feel like it didn't show solidarity. What I felt, and again, I'm not, you know, right there in the trenches, so to speak, but I feel like I felt a little bit of optimism of, well, maybe the SAG strike could come and go, and you know, maybe it will be really short, which has been kind of like the quick forecast people have been throwing out there. Why, I'm not sure, but I think the big thing with the writers and is going to be with the actors is AI, and writers just don't want it used in any way. And I think that you get everyone else having a little bit of issue with that because it does streamline some positions, mostly in the planning phase. Writing, I just don't think it's there. But as a person whose own content is going to be out there to be pillaged by AI, you know, and the way we didn't understand streaming technology when we made the last deal, I just think we can't be naive here. And I think there needs to be a lot of safeguards along the way as things change and we go, oh, I didn't realize it's going to be that way. And there has to be some sort of acknowledgement for that. And the growth of technology is so fast, we can't be beholden to this bad legislation.
Yeah, that's so right. And I think in that, what you just said, there is the complexity, like what has to be crafted. It's hard to say what it should be. And in the case of the writers, as you've also said, the planning or the writing of the Bible and for a show and the episodic beats of different shows in a series, that'll be done by a smaller group of people is the thought. And this is what the studios want.
Yeah, the mini rooms.
The mini rooms, exactly. And they
and for a
shed
shorter
a lot
amount
of
of
these other
time.
writers. Yeah.
Yeah, where they're just brought on to polish something up and then kicked back out and not seen, don't get to see anything on, and any sort of back end is non-existent, much less residuals that are when these things are sold in-house. It was bad enough when Fox started FX and these other little networks and they just sold their own shows to each other and then could show them in perpetuity, and we were just getting, you know, less and less. I come from the era where you could live very handsomely on residuals. I still do in some ways, but those are the more recent projects, and even then they're nothing like you used to get before, which is really commensurate with what you put out there. You know, that this job is not consistent, regardless of the quality that you want to put out there. There's not a lot of consistency, even for those of us who have been working consistently, and I haven't had another job since 98, but there has to be, there's so much money up top. There's so much money up top that there just has to be a distribution of that when we are the faces of that. We're the ones who have let ourselves go, or we're the ones who aren't what we were anymore just because of whether hair is off that day or makeup or lighting or anything else. We're still the people, you know, up there in front, and the writing is something that's still up there in front, is the backbone of what we're putting out there. Artists should continue to be paid for the work they put out there. You know, it gets hairy when I think you start talking about background workers and things like that. being paid a residual in perpetuity. But I think that, I don't know enough to speak on that, so I don't know why I brought that up. But I do feel that I think AI is going to be the biggest stumbling block. But I felt like we gave away a lot before, that
right.
I'd love to see back.
I mean, and last thing with Nicholas Gonzales, I would just say that the merger mania, I've had this issue on with many other things besides media, but it creates a lack of competition and real leverage on the part of the studios that the workers just don't have. It's weird to think of these incredibly creative and sometimes insanely successful people as workers, but that's what they are, writers and actors, performers. And you just don't have as many places to ply your wares, to do what you do,
right?
Because the platforms are owned by fewer and fewer entities. It's screwed up.
But I have a hard time listening to that the money isn't there when this is on the eve of it's still fresh in our mouths, the taste of $400 million deals that were given to creators and writers that were brought over and snatching executives back and forth, hundreds of millions of dollars. That, and deals of 400, that seemed crazy and astronomical because, well, it was there and the money was there and they were throwing it around, but now it's suddenly, we don't have the money to support even the work that's already done.
Yeah, they're always going to plead poverty, but you're right. The numbers just don't pencil out that way.
Well, the numbers aren't visible either, a lot of times with streamers. And
that's a huge issue. That's another huge issue. It's crazy to think you used to
be
able
to look at... And what show isn't the biggest streamer? I mean, I think every show that comes out goes, it's top in streaming, but now it's only number 20, and every show that comes out is top in streaming and billions of views.
If you produce a show for Netflix, even the producers of the show aren't ever told exactly how many times it was streamed. It's crazy. I mean, imagine that. So even on that end of it, the studios really, the new streaming monsters, it seems, have a lot of leverage. So
But how does that work for them too? Is it if you're not watching advertising on Netflix, what is it? Foreign sales of just their originals? I don't know, and I don't. The model. I'm not sure about how to.
Right, they want subscribers. They want time spent on the platform. But you're right, it's odd. And now they are integrating ads, so they will be ad supported on some level. Unskippable ads. You're seeing it across many platforms.
But on Max, I was watching Succession, and I had like commercials. On Max, which I thought was so crazy. And I'm like,
you do feel violated. Hey, I'm paying for this.
Yeah,
I'm paying for this service, and you're still stuffing this stuff down my throat. Yeah, I don't know. Look, more than anything, I just think super creative people deserve to be compensated for their work, and I consider artists and performers. I consider you guys doing something that's really hard, and through oftentimes extraordinary circumstance. I mean, these location shoots through all this bizarre weather. I mean, I know you went to Australia to shoot La Brea, I think it was, and
right.
I mean, you've been all. It's what you're asked to do and what you continually do. It's extraordinary, and you deserve.
And
to be compensated
it's a great adventure, and it's a life I love. But yes, I think people have to be paid for it. And we spent a long time perfecting whatever it is you hire us to do. But I think people need to then be compensated fairly.
Yeah,
and I think we saw in the pandemic, what was the first thing everybody turned to?
Wow. Exactly.
Art,
right.
Music.
Sure.
TV, film.
Right. Look, that's where these platforms flourished. They flourished in all those places and for that time, the pandemic. Come back and promote something that you're doing as you move on to your next thing, will you please?
Fantastic. Would love to.
All right.
Such a pleasure.
Nicholas, really great to see you, man. Thank you for coming by. Nicholas Gonzales, everybody. Yeah, right on.
The Mark Thompson Show.
And he is the real thing. He is a real actor. Really cool, smart guy. Kim is back, everyone. It was touch and go, I'll be honest with you. Her son was not feeling well.
Kim, how are you?
And she's back now. So welcome back, Kim. I think she's back. Maybe she's not. I see her in the green room.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Oh,
hi.
Now I hear you. Yeah, hello.
Sorry about that. It was an emergent doctor's appointment this morning for the boy, but he's doing okay.
All right. Oh, that's cool. Well, you missed a sudden
Nicholas.
Avila appearance.
Oh,
you missed
okay.
Gonzales,
I
Nicholas
saw
Gonzales.
him.
You
He's
also missed,
cute. Woo.
yeah. You missed Courtney with a story that would be of interest to you. It was about women. She started her segment by asking if you were around.
Oh, Courtney. I'll
because
go
she
back
had
and
a
watch
story about women,
Okay.
and she wanted another woman in the mix. And you missed one other thing, which was the very beginning of the show, which was the arrival at the home office of the Mark Thompson show of the Rod of Equity and Mercy.
Where did it come from? It's beautiful.
I don't know. There was no return address, but it is gorgeous.
It's you know what? John Daly was just in England, and he went to all the shops trying to find one, and apparently they don't sell it. It's too
they do
important.
not.
They don't want it to be
What?
replicated.
Yeah.
So wherever you've received this Rod of Equity and Mercy, this is something special.
I don't know who provided it for us. As I
Wow.
say, there was no return address, but it is quite special. And I've never seen anything.
I've never seen anything quite like this before.
There's never been anything like this.
That's what I meant to say.
That is gorgeous. Ooh, the
Yeah.
sparkle.
I mean,
We've never seen anything like it before.
I know it's.
Have you ever seen anything like this?
Is the
There
point.
is nothing
thing
in our
I
history
don't
that
think
quite compares
to this. Yeah, I really think it's quite special.
I can't believe no one's taking credit for this. This thing is crazy cool.
I know. How could you just send me this out of your pure? Well, this is the audience we have. Sometimes it's pure generosity. They don't want credit. They just want to advance the.
It's true.
But you can imagine I come from regular stock, and so for me, something like this is extraordinary. Yeah.
Wow.
So I'm going to find a black velvet sheath that I will store it in, and then of course it will be put into a place of utter security here at the Mark Thompson Show Network. So that's the latest on that. So, but now you're up to speed.
Thank you.
And there's been no
the Rod of Equity.
No one's actually
and
received it
Mercy.
today. Albert did. Albert received it, right? Albert, did you get it? Did I give it to you?
I did.
today?
Yeah, I did get it. Yep.
Okay, thank you. All right.
I thought you were going to strip it from me. I thought that was it.
No, I will tell you again. It's unstrippable from what I've read.
Once given,
Although
it's done,
certainly
a done deal.
you do push it to the limit. So I mean, if ever anybody was going to be stripped,
I'm
it
living
might
on
be
the
you.
edge. Yeah.
But that's not the way it's going to be. So
I do have some news if you're interested.
Oh, yeah, I was actually just kind of avoiding, pressing you into service.
Oh, no, I'm ready. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, good. Smash the like button for Kim being back. And
The Mark Thompson Show.
And here's Kim with her over-the-top news theme.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister. This report sponsored by Tenuta Vineyards in Livermore.
Yeah, Tenuta.
That's right. Guess what? It's official. It's former Vice President Mike Pence now officially running for president in 2024.
What?
Pence, he filed the paperwork to enter the race today, and he joins a growing field of candidates vying for the Republican nomination. Former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie and North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum are also expected to officially announce their bids this week as well. The Saudi Arabian
Quattro caños mas, as they as he once said. Right?
Quattro
caños
mas.
Yeah, that's it.
The Saudi Arabian government says
nice to have a Latino in the race, by the way. Yeah.
Oh,
anyway,
it is nice, isn't it?
Yeah, with
the Saudi
Pence.
Arabian government says it will cut oil production this summer, and that will likely push gas prices higher in America. The largest oil producer in OPEC will cut production by 1 million barrels a day, from 10 to 9 million. It's happening despite OPEC saying it wouldn't change production plans for the rest of 2023. And speaking of money, Apple stock hit a big old high today as it launches its own mixed reality headset. The company is announcing new updates and products at its yearly worldwide developers conference. Shares of Apple have been up over 1.5% throughout Monday's session on Wall Street.
There's never been anything like this.
Yeah. There are community members gathering in Memphis, and they are remembering what would have been Tyree Nichols on his 30th birthday. Nichols died, of course, following a beating by police officers during a traffic stop earlier this year, and 5 officers have now been charged with murder. Gun violence really took center stage, thanks to ABC7 for this photo. On the Golden Gate Bridge over the weekend, hundreds of people marched across the Golden Gate yesterday. They were raising awareness and demanding change, to end gun violence. Families, advocates, survivors, they all honored lives lost to guns and called for strong safety laws to keep kids safe at school. Many wore orange, which is the color that most hunters wear in the woods, to avoid becoming a target.
It was Gun Violence Awareness Day. I saw that in Florida.
Right.
They showed up in a big way. I mean, this is a movement of moms, I think, isn't it? It's a little like Mothers Against Drunk Driving.
Mm-hmm.
And so these moms who are marching and showing up this way, this is what I mentioned initially in regard to guns and gun regulation. I get it that it's the third rail. It's become this third rail politically. But that particularly moms, you guys have, I think, a voice that can't easily be ignored. I feel guys, we just throw, Molotov cocktails at each other, rhetorically, and it's a dead end. But you guys, I think, have a little bit more in the way of, there's something, I don't know what it is, but I think moms do have a little bit more of a voice often. So
I would like to think that enough pissed off moms will actually make a difference and get things done. There's a group called Moms Demand Action, and it is a network of families trying to end gun violence. And
that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, if you look up Moms Demand Action, if you're interested in becoming a part of what they're doing, it's not okay.
They started in 2015, and it seems like they've met their moment right now.
I mean, I've been following it all along, and I really think what they say and what they're doing is worthwhile. So yeah.
So this was part of that. I mean, there was something, the Empire State Building. There was some, as I say, in Tampa, Florida.
Country, yeah.
So
across the bay on the other bridge, on the Bay Bridge, it was a big traffic jam because apparently drivers were stopped for a music video shoot. That's right. One man captured it on video Saturday night, thinking first maybe it was a sideshow. Then he realized someone was recording a group of people dancing. The CHP says it's looking into what happened. I don't think they had the proper permits. I think they just halted traffic, filmed the thing they were filming, and then everything started moving again.
Oh my God. That's just insane.
You can't do that. No.
Yeah, that is not.
I'm Shadow Stevens.
No. Doesn't matter who you are. You cannot do it.
Yeah.
This is, it's one thing to shoot at North Beach or something and you don't have the permitting the way they used to in Manhattan. They'll steal some scenes. You need a kind of a backdrop, a location. But it's another thing in the middle of the Bay Bridge. No, man, that is not cool.
They're dancing right in the lanes of traffic.
That's right.
Not safe. Not safe and not
There's never been anything like this.
Okay, right.
Okay. So this next story is the last one here. There are apparently some senior students at the Pennsylvania High School have pulled off the ultimate senior prank. According to the Today Show, the students at Middletown devised a plan to stay up past their bedtime. They snuck into their principal's home and hid out until she woke up one morning. She arrives downstairs to find her entire house filled with high school seniors. The principal of St. Andrew's School was shocked to find out her husband was in on the prank and let them into the house hours earlier, and they all had breakfast together before going back to their real houses.
Oh my God, that's great. Bravo.
Oh, that's a good one. Imagine waking up, you walk down to breakfast in your bathrobe, and there's everybody.
That is too good.
The fine people at Tenuta Vineyards offer something like this. It is a flight of wine tasting, the likes of which you will be very grateful that you are partaking in.
Yeah.
Is a child-friendly, pet-friendly, cyclist-friendly winery. Of course, it is home of the Mark Thompson Why Are You Yelling Red Blend.
Yeah, come on.
Hey,
Order it by name.
Why are you
which
yelling?
one of
Yeah.
you is Mark Thompson Pinot Grigio?
Well, that is also very good. I was actually just having some of that yesterday.
Hey, which one of you is Mark Thompson?
All right.
Quite delicious. If you're a wine drinker, I think it's you must. It's a must try. As a matter of fact, I had a viewer, listener, who said her brother is really into wine. He's touring Tuscany now. Is coming back for his birthday, and he will have a box of the Why Are You Yelling Red waiting for him for a milestone birthday.
Wow.
And I think it's going to be able to be held up to those Tuscan wines he was just trying.
Yeah.
Why are you yelling?
It's a great blend. It's our proprietary blend, and many people have reacted in insanely positive ways.
That's right. So you
Yeah.
can get 10% off at Tenuta Vineyards because you have a deal with the Mark Thompson Show. All you have to do is call them and say unto them,
Smash it with your iron rod.
That's
Smash with
exactly
your
right.
iron rod. That's
And
all
you
it
get-
takes.
I was waiting for the drop. And
I
you
know. I
get
didn't
10
realize that until you said unto them. And I thought,
stay
that's
unto
when
them.
With your iron
Oh,
rod.
yeah.
And then you get the 10% off. TenutaWinery.com. You can call Rich at Tenuta, TENUTA, at 925-699-4576. Get your discount, get your wine. I'm
Wow.
Kim McAllister on The Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I come from regular stock.
Did you really just do that? I misspoke.
Thank you so much.
Y'all can all go to hell, and I'm going back to Texas.
Joe Fish, Sal the Shoemaker, Joe Box, and Little Anthony. No, no, no.
We have processes and protocols and standards.
Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God.
Is Don on the phone? And I also want to know what happened to the pictures I was supposed to see this week.
The Washington radical left crazy Democrats.
Thompson, party of four.
You know what, pal? You created havoc and chaos.
Morning.
Where are my weed smokers at?
Love it, love it, love it. Glad you could be part of it. Mark Thompson Show for Monday. And this is a very busy month. Looking forward to all kinds of stuff happening this month that we will share with you along the way. I mean, right away, my attitude has improved, knowing that there's a chance that former Vice President Mike Pence could be president of the United States, because there's not enough fundamental religion in our daily lives. I always felt like, let's get it out of the church and let's get it into the legislature. Let's make people pray. Let's make people obey. And that's what we're about. And Mike Pence is that guy. You know, here's a guy who dutifully served his president, Donald Trump, amidst the lawlessness, the knee-jerk tweeting, the stirring it up with despots and fascist leaders like Kim Jong-un, and the love affair that Trump had with Vladimir Putin. Mike Pence was there. He was a Trump apologist. He was a Trump supporter. 4 solid years of service. And then, when he wouldn't help undermine the election, Trump helped stir the pot and almost get him executed in front of the Capitol steps. So it was quite the run he had. But he's lived to tell the story, and he's filed the necessary paperwork, as you heard Kim mention. I'm sure he's planning a bunch of big events and rallies outside of Des Moines, Iowa, because Iowa is the big kickoff. You've got Governor Chris Christie entering as well, as Kim mentioned. And I believe Sununu, who is from Rhode Island, he said he's not going to run. And you can check that. But I think that's correct. And so
Google it.
Yeah.
Burgum is expected to run. He's a governor. He's expected to jump into the race as well. I have a question for you, though. His name is North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum.
Well, that's not his name, North Dakota Governor, unless he changed it to North Dakota
title
Governor.
And his name. Yes,
oh, I see. Okay, very good.
Thank you for keeping me honest.
Well,
so, there's
a certain purity that we have processes and protocols and standards.
Clear.
We have processes and protocols and standards.
That's all I'm saying.
So here's the question. Do you think it's worse? What's worse? Would you rather? Game. Have a guy who truly believes in, religion and the tenets of his religion, but then is challenged in his job, stays the course, even though he probably shouldn't, because everything that's happening really goes against everything he believes in? Or would you rather have a guy like Trump who says he believes, but he really doesn't, and it's all just giant hypocrisy?
Well, when you said like Trump, that's what changes it. But if you just take Trump out of it,
right?
And you're saying, so if you take Trump out of it, and you're saying, okay, it's Pence who,
like someone who stands up,
who really
and says,
sincerely believes, but
and then someone who doesn't really believe, but because the party goes along with all the tenets of the conservative, religious, whatnot, they say, God bless America, but really they don't go to church. They don't believe. It's obvious they don't believe, and they're just using religion to get where they want to go.
Yeah, I mean, you've given me two sort of awful choices, although it's still easy. Most people who run for public office don't care about religion. Most people. They care about it politically. Ronald Reagan wasn't a religious guy. Ronald Reagan, tipped the hat to religion. They show respect to religious beliefs and religious factions politically, but they don't believe. Same is true, I would suggest, of, I don't know, it's interesting. You have, attending church doesn't make you a believer. It just makes you a church attendee.
Yep.
I think in general, I guess just to put it from a bottom line standpoint, I don't care how much somebody says they're into religion, how much somebody shows up at church. I really only care about what they do. And so, to me, Pence made a pact with the devil. He's a supplicative person because he's already a person who's so given himself to God and to a religion that it's easy for him to give himself to authority. He gives himself to Trump. He gives himself to the power of the presidency. And he knows his duty then is to give himself to the presidential agenda. That is the gig, right? You're not there to challenge the president. You're there to support the president. So you could say he performed his role dutifully over a 4-year period. If you're saying, do I respect him for that? I don't respect almost anything that Mike Pence is about. I mean, again, everything I've seen him as part of, where he's trying the gay re-education programs when he was governor of the state. He took money from Planned Parenthood when he was governor of the state. But he's deeply religious. I don't care. That can be a good thing or a bad thing. I mean, waving the flag of I'm deeply religious is a good thing or a bad thing. It shouldn't have anything to do with public policy and with crafting good legislation to improve the lives of Americans. Many Americans aren't religious. You need to take care of them. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't it be better, though, if everybody was religious? No, it wouldn't be better. Wouldn't it be better if fewer people were religious? Maybe. I don't know if that's true either. I want to keep it clear of government. And so when you have a guy who, I hate how much we wave around references to God. Hate it. God should have nothing to do with it. Plenty of people who don't believe in God do the right thing. Some of the most do the right thing people in terms of taking care of others, taking care of the environment, being honest, and truly extending a hand to so many who need it, are atheists, people I know who don't believe in God at all. So this God thing, we wave it around, and you're going to hear a lot more about it because you can't out-God the right. There's always going to be somebody else who's a better Christian than you are. And so I find it a very dangerous thing. And so Mike Pence, as I say, it's not the God part I object to. I have no problem with it. In fact, I think deeply religious people have immense respect for whatever their system of belief and ritual is. But when it enters the governmental sphere, I lose respect. And I think Mike Pence is that guy who brings it into everything he does, Religion and patriotism are forms of control. I mean, I understand loyalty, and I understand loyalty to beliefs, but I really do. These are all comments. Julie says, I'm a Catholic, but some of my very favorite friends are atheists. Go figure. Yeah, exactly. I mean, of course, you can't pick your friends based on, belief structure. Increasingly in America, you can't pick your friends based on politics, right? I respect Pence for doing his job on January 6th. I think that's about it, says Randy. Yeah. Well, listen, good luck to him, and cuatro caños más.
Cuatro caños más.
These people are going to get shaken out. He's got great name recognition.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, let's turn to the Democrats for a second. The other guy with big name recognition on the Democratic side, apart from Biden, is who? If you said RFK Jr., yeah. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is the guy with big name recognition, which is why he's polling, I think, in the 20s. Now, again, this is largely the result of people who don't really know what Robert F. Kennedy's about. They know John F. Kennedy. They know Robert F. Kennedy, his dad, right?
They haven't figured out this is the crazy Kennedy?
Yeah,
Every family has one.
And now let me say this about the crazy. Yeah. If you really listen to Robert F. Kennedy through the years, which I have, because I'm a tree hugger, okay? And he's a tree hugger, so I listen to other tree huggers. And he's not a stupid man at all. He's not just some crazy, he's not like Michael Flynn, Yeah. Michael Flynn, this seditious, awful, grotesque, holy roller who wants to reform America and make it ruled by the Western mullahs of the hard Christian right that want to rule America as a Christian nation. They want to take up arms to make America a Christian nation. They want to make it a nation of believers. That's Michael Flynn, and that's the kind of crazy that scares me. Robert F. Kennedy is a smart man who's done a lot of hard work and heavy lifting when it comes to the environment. I also think Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is an honest guy. I don't think for everything in his family, they haven't been on the take. They haven't tried to figure out how to enrich themselves like so many of the politicians that we talk about today. And Robert F. Kennedy on any number of issues is both provocative and well-informed. On vaccines, which is the thing that, and I think the reason that Kim calls him crazy.
Highly troublesome.
Yeah. He is an anti-vaxxer, to use the phrase, and he is someone who has been an anti-vaxxer long before the COVID vaccine. Okay, so he's not new to the party.
Yeah.
He is someone who has talked about vaccines, the use of vaccines and the administering of vaccines in very young people and the possible effects. The over-vaccination of society, the over-vaccination of young people. The preservatives in vaccines, he's talked about those. He's written about those. Now let me say, some of that stuff is not only provocative, it is probably accurate, okay? And what do I mean by that? I mean that they've eliminated a lot of the use of mercury in many of these vaccines. Why did they do that? They did it because they found that there might have been some deleterious effects. Deleterious is a ding word of mercury. And I think mercury is now only in flu vaccine. But anyway, my point is, the guy's not crazy for everything he says, in my judgment. Mm-hmm. Some of this stuff is fact-based. I'll give you something else related to vaccines. And he's not the only one who says it. How come there is no way to take any kind of liability action against vaccine manufacturers or against these pharmaceutical companies that produce these things? So often, and this is where we've evolved in this culture, we've evolved to a place where so often there are complications of one sort or another. And there was a way to recover damages from these companies up until Ronald Reagan signed something saying, hey, essentially indemnifying these companies from any kind of liability action. That's why we have to sign those documents. When I got vaxxed, I signed those documents. When you got vaxxed, you probably had to also. So it's more than a little bit odd. So all I'm saying, Kim, is that not everything RFK Jr. says is loony. I think it's founded in some science that is both provocative and decent. Yeah. And so all I would say is I look at him as both an environmentalist and now as someone who questions science, and I look at him and try to look at him as unbiasedly as I can. Now you, go ahead.
Okay, so I feel like maybe all that you said is true, but when you are an anti-vaxxer and you come out against vaccines in general, you put the public's health at risk and you do the society that we live in a huge disservice. So it's possible that over the years, scientists have made changes to what the liquid vaccines are suspended in, or what preserves them, or what have you. But the benefits that we've seen from vaccines on our society are undeniable. And so I think someone is dangerous when they start not questioning, but coming out and saying, don't vaccinate. I think that's dangerous. And I think it doesn't serve us well.
I don't know if he said don't vaccinate, by the way. He might have. I don't know. I'm not, didn't come to this party with all my RFK Jr. stuff. But if he said that, it would strike me as irresponsible. I don't think he said that. So I'd love if we can, in evaluating people, at least keep it to what we think they actually said. But maybe he did say that, in which case you're right. That's loony. Look, all I'm trying to say, and I just started really in kind of the relevance of these names and name recognition in the presidential run. But
he was spreading vaccine and misinformation in 2021, and he was banned from Instagram because of it. He repeatedly shared debunked claims about the coronavirus and or vaccines in general. He was a leading anti-vaccine voice during the pandemic and sowed doubt and misinformation about the shots. He, though, has had his Instagram account restored because he's now a presidential candidate. So because of that, Meta says he's an active candidate for president. We have restored access to his account. So, now here he comes back on the platform to, I don't know what he's going to say next, but yeah, that's what I can tell you.
How about Elizabeth Warren for president? Meredith said, well, she was my pick in the last go round. I really wanted Elizabeth Warren. First, I love a woman, and I love because I think men our ego, our aggression, our smack talking. Now you find Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert, though. I mean, sorry, ladies, you've stepped up with just the same crap that guys are about. But Elizabeth Warren she is magnificent. I think Elizabeth Warren is a true advocate for consumers. She's an advocate for those who don't have a chance, I would have loved to have seen Elizabeth Warren become president. And I had hoped that she was going to really rock the show. She didn't have a lot of support from the black community, frankly. I think that hurt her politically. And she was never able to get, honestly, any real big momentum. And now she's viewed as too old. Okay. I mean, it's interesting,
how much do you think the whole Pocahontas thing hurt her with Trump calling her Pocahontas?
Well, they're always going to find something, in the Oppo research, they're going to find something. It didn't help, but you're right. I mean, the Pocahontas is definitely, it was not a, and, she explains it and, she explained her understanding of it, and it's always going to be explained, but the explanation never gets as much play as the nickname. So you're right. But it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter because she's not in the conversation now. And now the institutional part of the Democratic Party is going to fall in line behind Joe Biden, although I think they're troubled by his age. We talked about this on Friday, even though that, the falling down thing was just him tripping over a sandbag that's the same color as the floor. I've done that a jillion times, and any one of us could have, made that mistake. Joe Biden is far more agile and in better shape than Donald Trump. I mean, if you're just doing a side-by-side, come on, guys. Agile is a ding word, by the way. Yeah. So that's my view of Elizabeth Warren. I mean, I think essentially Joe Biden's going to go unchallenged. That's my feeling. Look, I'd love to see Cory Booker be president of the United States also. I think Cory Booker would be terrific. And these are not people who are wildly progressive either. There's Broadway Joe Biden. Yeah. In the yellow. We always put him in that yellow vet. So Kim will say, President Biden announced today a new support for the war in Ukraine. And I always say, well, he didn't announce it from the convertible vet, though, did he?
Sorry,
he did not.
That's a cool picture of Joe Biden.
It is super cool. Biden is in much better shape than most people. I agree with you. I have to say, for all this stuff about his age, every time I see him, the guy looks slim. He looks healthy.
Yeah.
I don't know. He likes these sports cars. Amy Klobuchar, they're asking. Karen says, what about her? I think Amy Klobuchar is a viable, she is, again, institutional Democrat. You're not going to get wildly progressive notions from her, but you're not getting wildly progressive notions from Joe Biden. I think that's one of the things I don't like about Joe Biden. I don't like his reach across the aisle politics. I don't. But I know that that's one of the things that carried him into office. But I think what you get, and then we will wrap up, but when you get a Joe Biden, you get the reaching across the aisle. You get a guy who is a product of the institutions of government. He's been in government for so long, and you have him reaching across the aisle and making concessions on things he shouldn't concede. Again, the pipeline through Appalachia, the fracking green light, the drilling in some pristine areas of the U.S. I'm talking about U.S.-owned parkland. There's no U.S.-owned territory. There's no end to it. On the environmental side, we gave up a lot in this last back and forth. I wish there was a little more of the junkyard dog in Joe Biden instead of the genial negotiator. That's
the elder statesman.
Yeah, that's my bias, Too bad we can't try Sanders again, says Karen. Yeah.
How old is he? God, he's ancient.
He might seem ancient. He might look ancient, but he doesn't sound ancient, and he seems vital in his ideas, which I really Well, Randy, you know something? You've got to. Yeah, let's not negotiate with those on the other side. We'll just refuse to compromise. You know what, Randy? I'm not saying you don't compromise, but I'm saying you do hang on to certain things. And I'll tell you something else, Randy, since you brought it up and you're making me angry now.
Why are you yelling?
The Democrats had the chance to get rid of this debt ceiling crap when they controlled all three, both houses of Congress and the executive branch. They had the power then, and it was brought up, and they didn't do it. there's a part of me that wonders if this isn't a way to give something up that you want to give up. So, yeah, I'm angry that they gave things up. And I'm more angry at the Democrats for not playing hardball with the things they say they care about, like this debt ceiling. Get rid of it already. And you had the power to do it. So that's where I am. There's Bernie Sanders. I think he looks fine.
He's 82. 82 years old. Yeah.
Okay. Well, he's a vital, vibrant 82. But I hope
we also mentioned Klobuchar as well.
There's Kloby. Kloby looking good. Yeah. Look at you, Klobster. All right. Let me. Do I have something to do, Albert? What am I doing, Albert? Please. Gosh. What do I?
Albert, thank you.
Lori from above the bar. Happy Monday, everyone. She says. And
morning.
This is from Daniel D. The change I owe him. I guess Daniel D. was at the Red Jack. Is that what that was in San Francisco? If you go to San Francisco, check out the Red Jack. Lori is there. And I guess that was change that was owed. So Big Dan Ashley shout out. Yeah.
Roll it over and kick it over to the Thompson show.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I love that. Love the Red Jack. Can't say enough. You get me going about Bernie Sanders and Amy Klobuchar and Elizabeth Warren and a walk through the loyalty of Mike Pence, the craziness on the right, the craziness on the left, more craziness on the right. I'm going to give you that. And I just can't stop. But I have to stop.
I don't know what the hell they do it for.
PayPal and Patreon is how you support. Thank you, Ricky. I haven't mentioned it all day. We're crowd-funded. Find us on PayPal and Patreon.
Smash it with your iron rod.
That's right. Maybe you too will get the rod of equity and mercy. Oh, yes. It could be in your future.
Receive the rod of equity and mercy.
I love all of you who make this a regular part
I'm
of
Shadow
your day.
Stevens for the Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
Is there a Nikki show today or not?
Yes, there is.
There is. Over to the Nikki Maduro channel for more. Till tomorrow. Bye-bye.